Welcome back to KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle. As the effects of the Tyson plant closure ripple through south and central Nebraska, many have stepped up to help.
We spoke with a couple of nearby chambers of commerce to discuss how community organizations are facing the issues of displacement and unemployment as they work to pave a path ahead.
It's going to have an economic impact, for the whole region. It just is.
A lot of things in limbo, a lot of speculation, what happens next, and just general fear and concern.
A University of Nebraska-Lincoln study says Lexington's Tyson plant accounted for roughly 5% of all U.S. beef slaughter. And the statewide economic losses from a permanent closure could figure at about $3.3 billion a year.
Certainly really feel for those families in that situation. So we're doing all that we can as a neighbor to try to help as much as we can.
North Platte is picking up some of the slack left by Tyson's departure as its economy has built up over the decades.
We have been in a position, where we've had this good growth. And if one thing we were lacking on, it was the availability of an employment workforce. We were able to absorb quite a few employees from Dawson County.
Gary Person with the North Platte Chamber says Sustainable Beef now employs about 500 people who live in the Lexington area.
They already have the skill set, and they're experienced workers, they're hard workers.
Industry leaders have flocked to Lexington to participate in job fairs and to survey the surroundings for future development.
They recognize the natural resources that we have, whether it be our power, whether it be our water, whether it be our ready-to-go-to-work workforce.
Clay Patton, president of the Lexington Area Chamber, sees this as a lesson in the importance of economic diversification.
I think this is going to be a potential proving ground to see what type of these mid-cap and mid-sized businesses, manufacturers, processors can we bring in here that can kind of help to maybe show what the next turn is, not only in Lexington, but in the next small town USA, where if one business goes out, it's not a crippling move.
But pushing ahead can be like driving through fog, as a major question mark looms over Tyson.
You've got a couple balls that you're juggling in the air, but you really don't know when the flaming ball is going to come down and how you're going to handle that when it lands. So that is the biggest thing, is just the uncertainty that surrounds the future of that plant.
Patton says the community should know more about the future of the site if Tyson plans to sell it, leave it shuttered, or bring it back into their production line by the end of March or beginning of April.
Lexington is a diverse community, and we're Lexington strong, and we're going to continue to be Lexington strong.
We might be neighbors and we compete with each other once in a while, but in the end, we're all just good old hardworking, hardy Nebraskans.
Joining us now is Eric Carilla with the Nebraska Department of Labor. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, John.
So first, tell me, why is it so important for the state of Nebraska to invest so much time and energy in Lexington right now?
As you know, Lexington is an all-American town, and we need to make sure that all those affected by the shutdown get reemployed as fast as possible. We've been spending a lot of time in Lexington since we knew that the shutdown was coming down. We have had over 50 plus events, rapid response events and job fair events, including workshop events to help individuals understand what the options are during the time frame of the shutdown and afterwards. As of now, we are making sure that the individuals have different options, not just with the employers, but also with transportation. One of the things that we have been doing right now is the Lexington transportation pilot that went live about 2 weeks ago. With this transportation, we'll be providing individuals the chance to ride from Lexington to North Platte. We have 2 employers in North Platte that have partnered with us, Sustainable Beef being one of them, and the North Platte Distribution Center. We are hoping that the numbers go up as more individuals know that the transportation is available. As of now, it is a 3-month pilot, but we're hoping that it goes up to a year.
Tell me a little bit more specifically about your role. You are the head of reemployment services. So what have you been doing in Lexington specifically?
We've been making sure that all individuals that right after the shutdown went into the unemployment, we're making sure that they understand what the process is by getting them into the system. That was step number 1, getting them into the system. Step number 2 was making sure that they were registered and began to get their unemployment benefits. We do also make sure with the individuals that they understand how to do the weekly certifications. As you know, that entails job searching and stuff like that. For the individuals that don't know how to do it, we offer workshops. In fact, we just started with the workshop for weekly certifications on March 10th, and we have another one set up for March 26th. With that type of information, it allows the individuals to know how to do it, how to look for jobs. But at the same time, we're connecting them to other employers. With the job fairs that we have available, we don't just have the local employers, we also have employers all across the state coming in, offering jobs to the individuals. Some of them even offer relocation, assistance for these individuals. But one of the things that I can tell you that while talking to the Nebraska Department of Labor agency that we have there and all the partners, that a lot of the individuals want to stay in Lexington. They want to find work around the area, which is why we're trying very hard to make sure we connect them to different areas across the state and across Lexington.
Yeah, and I first met you in Lexington at one of these events. What are you hearing from people at these events? What are some of the biggest concerns from the people in Lexington right now?
Yeah, the biggest concerns that I keep hearing from a lot of them is the housing market. A lot of them are worried about what's going to happen to my home. For a lot of the individuals, they have bought a home, they own it for years, and they want to know exactly how we're going to keep them paying that mortgage, right? So we connect them to resources so they understand what they can do. But they also want to know what's out there, what's available for me. A lot of the individuals feel that, hey, because they've done a certain type of job in the industry, that they can't learn new things, right? But we're here to show them that, yes, there are new things that we can help out with. One of the greatest things about the Tyson plant is that although most individuals will think that it's just one type of specific job that they did, there's a huge talent pool that comes out of Tyson. Just within Tyson itself, we had individuals that were in the healthcare system, individuals that were maintenance, individuals that work on computers, plumbing. All that talent pool is something that we are going to connect to employers that need them. And if there's individuals that want to retrain themselves into a different industry, that's what we're there for. In fact, we just got awarded the $1.7 million dislocated worker grant as of last week that we'll be using in that location and on the surrounding counties to help all those individuals in that.
And of course, the shuttering of the Tyson plant affects more than just Lexington. This is kind of a statewide issue, isn't it? Could you speak to the repercussions across the state and what we could see in terms of unemployment in that particular area?
Yeah, it is definitely going to have a ripple effect, but that is why we're there to make sure that Lexington thrives, and we want to make sure that the individuals have all the opportunities available. We have been in partnerships not just with other agencies like the Department of Health and Department of Economic Development to make sure that we're trying to figure out ways that we can provide help and minimize that, correct? That effect. In fact, on the 26th event that we're going to have, the Small Business Administration is going to be at the job fair event, offering support to employers, local employers from Lexington, to let them know what opportunities are out there for them. That way we can minimize any shutdowns of different industries within the town and also have a ripple effect across the state. So yeah, those are things that we know are going to happen, but we're definitely working very hard to minimize it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for taking the time. Still ahead on KETV Newswatch 7's Chronicle, the state and federal legislation aimed at helping those in Lexington, plus how the town is keeping hope alive with a beloved sport. First, a reminder that your comments are an important part of this show. If you want to be heard, email your comments to news@ketv.com. Remember, we love hearing from you. We'll be right back.